A young man that had just enlisted in the U.S. Marine Corps, when told who his first sergeant was, said, "God, you mean he's real? I thought he was someone the Marines made up, like Paul Bunyan." His sergeant was very much real, and his name was Dan Daly. I'm Indy Nidell. Welcome to a Great War Bio Special about Dan Daly. Daly is one of only 2 Marines to be awarded 2 Medals of Honor, but I'll get there in a minute. He was born, officially, November 11, 1873 in Glen Cove, Long Island. I say officially because records suggest he was actually born in 1870. As a youth, he was a newsboy, selling papers on Park Row, and a semi-professional boxer. In January 1899, he enlisted in the Marine Corps, inspired by the Spanish-American War. Now, that war ended before his training did. Daly's Marine career did reflect a real transformative time for the USMC. It was the oldest branch of service in America, formed 1775. But their mission had always come with the question, were they soldiers who went to sea or sailors who fought on land? They really came into their own with the Spanish-American War as the first to fight, when America gained its first foreign possessions, Puerto Rico, Guam, and the Philippines under the Treaty of Paris. Daly, once he began service, was assigned to shipboard duty in the Asian fleet. He first saw action in the Boxer Rebellion in the summer of 1900. I'm not going to go into detail on the rebellion. Suffice it to say that the anti-Western, anti-Christian Boxers converged on Peking after raiding across China. The Empress took advantage of this insurgency to declare war on the Western powers. And that summer, some 3,500 foreign diplomats, missionaries, and Chinese Christians took refuge in the walled-off legation quarter, to which the Boxers and Chinese soldiers laid siege after cutting the Peking-Tianjin Railway. 2 U.S. ships off the coast of China had responded to a telegram for help, and Daly was on one of them, the Newark. They were a big part of an 8-nation army that fought its way from Tianjin to Peking, and the Marines and Germans managed to get atop the Tartar wall around the legation quarter. By June 30th, though, the enemy had forced the Germans from the wall. Daly remained, and under fire by poorly armed rebels, managed to single-handedly hold his position, killing many of the enemy. Other foreign troops would arrive and end the siege, and Dan Daly was awarded a Medal of Honor for his defense. I'm going to fast forward 15 years to his second one. In 1915, the Marines landed in Port-au-Prince, Haiti. This was following several years of instability and assassinations there. Daly was awarded another Medal of Honor for his actions on October 24th. While attacked by rebels from 3 sides, the horse carrying the Marines' machine gun was killed in the river. Daly repeatedly went back under fire and dove into the water to finally remove the gun from the horse and bring it back to his men. The following day, they scattered the rebels, and he was given the medal for his gallantry and extraordinary heroism. Dan Daly also saw service in this war, or I wouldn't be talking about him. When the U.S. joined the war in 1917, the Marines were called back to the U.S. from all over the world. They were formed into 2 regiments to go to France with the American Expeditionary Force. The 6th Regiment, which included Daly, was a mix of veterans and new recruits. They were sent to France, and after serving in a quiet sector near Verdun, were transferred to the north of Paris. The Kaiserschlacht, the German spring offensives, was advancing in the region in late May and early June, creating a salient whose ends were at Soissons and Rheims. The Germans took Soissons, but the Marines were sent to Chateau Thierry beyond it, where they held off German attacks June 2nd to 6th. Now, on the 4th and 5th, the Marines held off attacks from German infantry that had entered, dug in, and attacked from the ravines and the forest of Belleau Wood. On the 6th, the Marines, including Daly's platoon, counterattacked. In order to do so, they had to cross a field under fire to reach the woods. Reporter Floyd Gibbons, one of the most famous U.S. journalists, was with the platoon, and he described it like this. A small platoon of Marines lay on their faces and bellies at the edge of a wheat field. 200 yards across that flat field, the enemy was located in the trees. The bullets nipped the tops of the young wheat and ripped the bark from the trunks of the trees 3 feet from the ground on which the Marines lay. An old gunnery sergeant commanded the platoon in absence of the lieutenant, who had been shot and was out of the fight. As the minute for advance arrived, he arose from the trees first and jumped out into the exposed edge of that wheat field that ran with lead. There he turned to give the charge order to the men of his platoon. He said, "Come on, you sons of bitches, do you want to live forever?" The Marines would spend the next 3 weeks clearing the Germans from the forest. Daly was wounded on June 21st, though he would be back in action later in the year to fight at Saint-Mihiel and Blanquemont, where he was wounded twice and was out for the remainder of the war. The armistice came on his birthday. He was recommended for a third Medal of Honor for 3 separate acts of courage at Belleau Wood, but some of the higher-ups thought it unseemly. So he was given the Distinguished Service Cross and later the Navy Cross. He was a 45, possibly 48-year-old man at the time. He'd been awarded a slew of medals in total, including the French Croix de Guerre with Palm and Médaille Militaire, and was one of the most decorated men in any branch of U.S. service. Dan Daly retired in 1929 and was given a parade from Bedford Avenue to the Williamsburg Bridge Plaza in Brooklyn, as well as a gold medal for 30 years of service. As for his personality, he was a fairly unassuming man, but though not very big, he inspired confidence. In fact, he stood just 5'6" tall and weighed just 132 pounds. He refused commission in the Marines, saying, "Any officer can get by on his sergeants. To be a sergeant, you have to know your stuff. I'd rather be an outstanding sergeant than just another officer." His final rank, to which he was promoted in 1920, was Sergeant Major. After he retired from service, he led a quiet life and worked as a guard at a Wall Street bank. He never married. Dan Daly died in Glendale, New York in 1937. He remains a legendary soldier for his exploits and service all over the world and over a period of decades, but especially for this channel, on the battlefields of France during the Great War. We'd like to thank Madeline Johnson for the research for this episode. If you want to learn more about U.S. President Woodrow Wilson during World War I, you can check out our bio special about him right here. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram to learn even more about the First World War, and do not forget to subscribe. See you next time.